purposely titled this A Short History of Batestown because I'm the first speaker today. And I intended to try and get you all interested in this story. I know some of you know the history of Batestown, but not everyone does. So I want to try and introduce this community to everyone, and also to give more resources for people to do more research if they would like to, and also to hopefully pique your interest and participate in a walking tour of Batestown scheduled for later this year. So by no means is this supposed to be an exhaustive history of this community. Now, Batestown is an African-American community within Prince William County. So there's going to be a lot of similarities with other African-American communities that also share the boundaries of Prince William. There's going to be some differences for the community of Batestown compared to other African-American communities such as the Settlement, Lucasville, Agnaville, Chintown, Smoketown. 3 names for one community. So, but Batestown is one of the many numerous communities in Prince William County that is established in the 19th century and survives and starts all the way up to today. Now, to give you a sense of where Batestown is, and I'm very appreciative of this very large screen, so it's really easy to make stuff out. This is a photograph excerpt of a map from the 1920s, 1930s that shows southeastern Prince William County. So the center of the map you can see is basically Dumfries, Virginia. Route 1 is that big, solid, dark road. 234 is also listed on this map, but you can see communities such as Neabsco, Cherry Hill, Triangle, and just immediately to the west of Dumfries is Batestown. So you can see at this time there were multiple roads leading into this community, and also multiple landmarks within the community that we'll be mentioning throughout the presentation. So this just gives you a sense of where Batestown is located in Prince William County today. Now, in preparation for today's program, I was looking at other historical maps of Prince William County just for reference, and this is something that finally dawned on me, or dawned on me for the first time, rather. This is another map from the 1900s, so this is a 1901 map of Prince William County, a very detailed map. It delineates towns, communities. You can see on this map right here, this portion, it also delineates prominent farms or buildings. But one thing I didn't notice until earlier this week, it does not delineate African-American communities. So Batestown is not shown on this map, nor is Lucasville or the Settlement or other historically Black communities in Prince William County. So this is one of the challenges that historians have, is trying to figure out the biases of prior historians or other people who gather information for us. There are inherent biases, and there's also inherent biases that they don't really become apparent until years or decades later. So trying to do research, if you're just looking at maps, could be somewhat problematic because some maps are going to delineate the community of Batestown, and some aren't going to show it at all. However, for this community, we're very fortunate that we have 2 sources that are fairly unique to historians, and those are oral history projects. And we're very fortunate that the Prince William County Historical Commission has sponsored both of these projects. The Historical Commission is a body of citizens appointed by the Board of County Supervisors to assist with either historic or historic preservation issues within the county. Typically those are land use or planning issues, but they also sponsor historical markers and also historical projects. And so one of the first oral history projects that the Historical Commission sponsored, I'm still trying to figure out if this is the first oral history project for the Historical Commission, is a oral history of Mr. DeWitt Bates. This was conducted in 1984. Mr. DeWitt Bates was born on Christmas Day 1900, so he was 84 years old when this oral history was conducted, and he passed away just a few years after this project. So we are very fortunate that this project was initiated when it was to capture this information. Now, I mentioned another oral history project, again, under the auspices of the Historical Commission, with assistance by staff from the Planning Office and the Office of Historic Preservation. There was a larger oral history project conducted in 2019, focusing mainly on the history of Batestown in the 20th century. And this is a fairly large document, about 322 pages of oral histories of about a half dozen residents or former residents of this community, along with other archival research. So this is a really good starting point for any research into the history of Batestown. So it's very fortunate we have these oral history projects, because oral history is a resource that historians have started to tap into in the past 20 or 30 years. And so this really broadens the expanse of historical information to have access for historical purposes. For a long time, many historians have been focusing on the archival resources or the architectural resources that still survive in the wild, and those are still very important, but oral history is something that can fill in a lot of the gaps that some of the archival research just doesn't have available for historians. And one of the nice results of oral history projects is this is an opportunity when family members are coming out, remembering history, and also bringing up photographs of their family and also of other elements of their community. And so this is a way for historians to capture some of these photographs for future use. These photographs still survive, but they're in private collections, but this is an opportunity now for genealogists, local historians, government officials to have access to some of these historical documents that would otherwise be closed off in private collections. And this example right here is a photograph of Mr. DeWitt Bates in the early 19 teens when he's a child with one of his siblings. So for the history of Batestown, I would argue that there are three very important events in the history of this community. One in the 1800s, one in the 1900s, and one in the 1700s, 1800s, and 1900s. So the 18th, 19th, and 20th centuries. Probably the most important, but this is arguable, is the actual formation of this community. So like I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of similarities with Batestown to other African American communities. There are some differences. And the key difference for the community of Batestown is when it's created. Most African American communities in Prince William County are formed in 1865 or after, with the abolition of slavery and the formation of free towns. So Lucasville is one of those towns or communities being formed. The settlement is one. But Batestown is unique in that it's created prior to that. It's created in the 1790s and the early 1800s, after the American Revolution. Because this is an event, the American Revolution was an event that unleashes a lot of ideas, mainly equality and liberty. And so even though not everyone embraces those ideals in the same way, this is a event that actually starts to change the conception or the perception of slavery throughout North America. So famously, the northern colonies abolished slavery. Virginia doesn't do that, but there are some debates about what Virginia does do after the American Revolution is finally pass some laws that legally allow manumission of enslaved people. So prior to this, during the colonial time period, it was very hard, if not impossible, to legally free enslaved people. After the American Revolution, there are new laws in the book that actually allows the process to take place. And these laws are going to still remain on the books until the 1860s and the outbreak of the Civil War. Now, those laws are going to be stymied, especially in the 1830s with like Nat Turner's Rebellion. There's going to be a lot of restrictions placed on free African Americans, freed in the later half of the 19th century. But this is one of the reasons why Batestown is able to be formed in the 1700s, early 1800s, is the law that allows for the emancipation of the formerly enslaved people. If the enslaver feels the need to free these people. So George Washington is a famous example of someone who manumits his enslaved people at his death. There's other people who manumit enslaved people throughout Prince William County and Virginia, like Robert Coster III. But some of the enslavers who owned the Bates family and some other families, Scottish families, in the 1790s, they start to emancipate some of their enslaved workforce. Probably also some of their extended kinship. So I would imagine that there are some familial relationships between these Scottish families and these formerly enslaved people who are not right now able to establish that. But not only are these people free, but they're also given land in west or eastern Prince William County, just west of Dumfries, to settle on. And so this is why Batestown is a established community prior to the American Civil War. It's one of the first African American communities in Prince William County. So this probably the second most important event for the creation, or not creation, but for the history of Batestown is the Civil War. Now this is an engraving of the community of Dumfries in the 1860s. I think this is late 1862 or early 1863. And so just like many other communities in Prince William County, the Civil War is very devastating, but it also, with it, brings freedom for a third of the county residents, including the African American residents of Dumfries. Prior to 1861, Dumfries is an interracial community, so there are both black and white residents in the town of Dumfries. The vast majority of black residents, though, are enslaved. And so when the Civil War ends and the abolition of slavery is announced, and you have the 14th and 15th Amendments being ratified, this is a time in which African American communities are mainly being formed throughout the South and other parts of Prince William County. And this is when Batestown really starts to grow pretty quickly. One of the oral histories, Mr. DeWitt Bates, remembered that all whites lived in Dumfries at that time, the late 19th, early 20th century, nothing but whites. Batestown was nothing but blacks. So in about 1866, 1867, you have most of the free African Americans moving to Batestown, making Dumfries white, while Batestown is going to basically be the African American neighborhood for the town of Dumfries. So it's not incorporated within the boundaries of the town of Dumfries, but it very much is an interconnected community with Dumfries. And so again, this is something that's playing out throughout Prince William County, Virginia, and the South. Free people, free men and women, are establishing with their feet new communities. They're initially in the late 1860s still working either on the land that they were enslaved with or with families who enslaved them prior to the Civil War. But this is a way, the establishment of African American communities, for them to have a little bit more set of freedom and responsibility for themselves, that they can actually establish where they're going to be living themselves. And so this is one of the ways in which you have Liberty Street and Prince William Street becoming African American communities too here in the city of Dumfries. The city of Manassas. Apologies for that misspeaking. This is probably one of my favorite photographs that we have of Prince William County history. This is Route 1, probably around the time of World War I, with Williams Ordinary in the background. I leave it up to you to decide what is a better road, today's roads or this quagmire.
I believe there's
and then I'm not a car aficionado. I don't know if this is a Model T. I don't think this is a Model T. All right, this is a way to crowdsource information. This is not a Model T. But in the oral history, Mr. DeWitt remembered seeing his first automobile in his life. And it was when Mr. Radcliffe, who was a white store owner in Dumfries, bought a Model T Ford. And Mr. DeWitt Bates remembered seeing Mr. Radcliffe in the car. He said he wasn't going over about 10 miles an hour. But the old road, as bumping through here, you know, it was. He looked like he was scared of it. Now, if Radcliffe is scared of the road and the car, he doesn't really say. But what's interesting is also, a little bit later on, Mr. Radcliffe takes his wife in that car all the way down to Florida on an epic road trip, probably taking about 4 weeks. And decides to return that car to Dumfries. But when they return to Dumfries, Radcliffe actually sells that vehicle to DeWitt Bates' father. So there are connections between Dumfries and Batestown. So this is where many people are initially going to find employment after the Civil War. This is where many people are initially going to be shopping in some of these community stores in Dumfries. But there are going to be other types of relationships between the residents of Dumfries and Batestown. All right, so we're going to move out of the community of Dumfries. We're going to move a little bit to the west, and we're going to be looking at two of the landmarks for the community of Batestown, the school and the church. These are not in any order of importance. I just randomly put the school first and the church second, but they're both equally important for the community of Batestown. And like I mentioned earlier, the Historical Commission, one of their tasks is for the creation or sponsorship of some of these historical markers. And so these are the two historical markers that are sponsored by the Historical Commission for the church and the school that you can see on Batestown Road today. So I don't know if you want to go today. It's going to be pretty dark when we end here. It's still going to be pretty wet. But tomorrow is supposed to be a pretty nice day. So you can actually do a nice little driving tour and see these markers and see these schools today. All right, so again, not in any order of importance, but this is the school for the community of Batestown. This is the Cabin Branch School. So there are multiple buildings for the school. So the school was established in the 1880s, 1890s, and there's going to be some sort of school there until the late 1930s. It's not the same building. The building is going to be demolished and rebuilt a couple more times throughout the 20th century for better usage and also for the growing student body. And so this is the last school for the Cabin Branch site that you can see. The picture on the left of the screen is from the Prince William County School Board's archives. We're very fortunate that all of these schools were documented in the 1930s, and those documentation still survives today. So in the bottom half, you can see the floor plan for the school. The center is a photograph of Cabin Branch, and I've enlarged it so you can see it a little bit better. And then the top is an architectural description of this building in 1938 when it was conducted. Now, the 2019 oral history projects for Batestown have a couple really interesting aspects of schooling that I'm going to be sharing with you today. Keep in mind, though, that when the Cabin Branch School is in operation, Virginia is ruled by Jim Crow. So we have segregated school systems, separate but equal school systems in theory, separate yes, equal no, because African American schools in Prince William County are chronically underfunded in the early 20th century. Now, Mr. Jerome Johnson wrote about going to school here in the Cabin Branch School, and he said, quote, Cabin Branch was a segregated school, 1 or 2 rooms. I think the teacher, I remember who was up there, didn't ever go there, was Miss Porter. And they built a school in 234, a segregated school, Washington Reed. It went on to the 7th grade, and then after the 7th grade, we went to what was Jenny Dean High School. It used to be Manassas Regional School. So there is a connection between the community of Batestown and here with the city of Manassas, with these students going to high school at Jenny Dean just down the road from here. This is another way to highlight some of the inequities for the African American school system. There are multiple white high schools in Prince William County, so Occoquan, in the Brentsville district, here at Manassas. So there's basically a high school in the eastern, central, and western parts of Prince William County if you're a white student. If you're an African American student and you're going to high school, there is one in Prince William County here in Manassas. So it's going to be one of the reasons why many students aren't going to have a high school education in the 20th century, just the logistical issues of actually getting to the one high school for African Americans in Prince William County. Another interview for the 2019 oral history, Cecily Lee remembered going to the Washington Reed School on 234. She said, yeah, I went to Washington Reed first grade. And then my dad took me out of that because he and my uncle came up and there was no heat in the school. My friend and my dad got arrested because they went up to the school commission's house and there was no heat. So they stayed in jail for one day, and then I ended up going to DC to live with my aunt. So one of the reasons why members of the Batestown community are engaging in the Great Migration, the transformation of African Americans from the South to either urban areas or northern areas for better logistical life outcomes, so economic or educational, is highlighted with that statement. The school just doesn't have that better heating system, and so she's going up to Washington, D.C. for a better school opportunity. And then, so just like the school, Little Union Baptist Church is established in the post-Civil War time period and is still there. Oh, sorry. I forgot to mention this. So when the school closes in the late 1930s, the school board sells the property to people who have the highest bid. And so this is one of the reasons why there are multiple white schools that still exist in Prince William County today, but are now private residences. So Eden, Orlando, I think Bradley are still there today with the private residences. I still can't figure out how this happened, but for whatever reason, the building's sold, the parcel doesn't get sold or it reverts back to the county. So long story short, Prince William County still retains the land for the school. So we have the foundation for the school and all the architectural resources that are still there. Not a lot, but there are some, along with the archaeological resources. And this is the potential for a new pocket park being established in the near future. So the other landmark, again, is Little Union Baptist Church, and just like the school, it's established after the Civil War, it's still there today. And then just like the school, it sees different buildings, but the congregation is still there. So even though the building that you see here is from the 1960s, that congregation is in existence from the 1870s, 1880s time period. Excuse me. And what's interesting is, during the oral histories, this is an opportunity to find new stories that would be very hard, if not impossible, to discover in the archival records. And so during the oral history, two sisters, Conti Chapman and Linda Hawkins, remembered that initially all the baptisms associated not only with this church, but all the churches in this area were taking place in Quantico Creek. They were actually the first two congregants who were baptized outside of Quantico Creek when there was an indoor pool created in the 1960s. And so starting from 1960 forward, all the baptisms were happening indoors rather than outside at Quantico Creek. So looking through church records, you probably would be able to find that information. It'd just be a lot more difficult and harder to find. So this is one of the benefits of oral history projects, is that there's more information that comes out that'd be very difficult to find in other resources. Some of the interviewees for the 2019 oral history remembered fond memories of singing in the church choir, such as Ora Glass, who played piano for the choir for many years. And so this is a photograph of the church choir from 1953. Again, just like the Mr. DeWitt Bates oral history, the 2019 oral history was an opportunity for people to bring out their photographs for public use. And so the church was a very important religious landmark for the community of Batestown, but it's also a very important aspect for an event called Homecoming. And if you will, I'm just going to read an excerpt from the oral history project just because it gives a little bit better explanation of the Homecoming event than I could probably give. Well, the largest community gathering in Batestown was undoubtedly the church's yearly homecoming. During homecoming, people who lived in Batestown or went to Little Union Church would return for a large celebration. Margaret Simmons explained that, quote, the road would be lined with cars all the way down, just a number of people. The congregations of nearby churches would also travel to Little Union during this time, and when those churches had homecomings, Little Union would do the same. Even people who did not typically go to church or were not particularly religious would participate in homecoming. Some interviewees expressed that this bond is not nearly as strong as it once was. General Bates, during the interview, stated, but now ain't nobody coming back home. Homecoming is just like any other Sunday. So this is not within the boundaries of Batestown, but it's also a site that's going to be very important in the formation or the expansion of this community. This is the Pyrite Mine. And this is one of the challenges, I would say, of doing historical community research, is where the boundaries of these communities are. For towns and cities, it's pretty easy because you have the government delineations for it. But for neighborhoods or other types of communities, it's more difficult. You can identify the core area of these communities, but where does Batestown end and Hickory Grove begin? Where does Woodbine begin? And where does Canova end? Can be a little bit more of a trickier question to answer. So by no means is this pyrite mine within the boundaries of Batestown, but it's still a very important feature for this community. It's going to be one of the reasons why the Batestown community is going to grow in the late 19th century, so late 1800s, early 1900s. More and more people are moving into this area because they're finding employment for pyrite mine. So we have new residents of Batestown coming from Richmond, from Southwest Virginia, from the Shenandoah Valley, moving into this community because they're finding employment for pyrite mine. The pyrite mine will be in operation until just after World War I when it closes. And so this is a time period before the EPA, so when the mine closes, it's not done in a way that we would find acceptable today in 2024. And so this mine is going to be continually to cause both environmental and health problems for members of the Batestown and Dumfries communities throughout the 20th century. So probably the last events of the three most important events for the history of Batestown is the creation of initially Chappaquiddick Recreational Area, later retitled Prince William Forest Park. And so this is an event that takes place in the 1930s during the Great Depression. So most of us know about the Great Depression, a quarter of the workforce being unemployed, but for many Americans, especially farmers, the Depression starts a full decade earlier in the 1920s. Many American farmers throughout the country are overextended because of World War I, and so they start to see their profits going down. And so a way for many farmers to try and continue to have a decent standard of living is to grow more crops, to put more emphasis on the land that they have. And unfortunately, that has a tendency to exhaust a lot of the soil. And so for 10 years before the Great Depression, it's very hard living for many farmers in the country, including here in Prince William County. So during the Great Depression, there's an idea to try and put people to work and also to get people off of poorly performing farms, to buy farms that really can't be economically viable in the future, and to create those former farmlands into recreational areas. And so this is why Prince William Forest Park was created during this work project administration project to create a recreational area for urban residents of the Alexandria and Washington, D.C. areas. And so agents of the federal government were coming down to Prince William County, to eastern Prince William County, and offering to buy parcels of land for people in Batestown, Hickory Ridge, Joplin, all different parts of southeast Prince William County. Some people are selling their land, but for the recreational area to really succeed, there needs to be a lot of acres, and they have to all be contiguous. And so for people who are resisting to sell, they are being threatened with federal purchasing agent coming in later, getting a lesser amount than they're offering at this moment. And then finally, if there are any holdouts, then their land can be seized by eminent domain. And so this is a story that actually is not unique to Batestown. This is generally how Marine Corps Base Quantico is created in the 1940s. And then just further west of here, Shenandoah Valley National Park, Skyline Drive, is created the same way. The federal government coming in trying to purchase the property, and if not being purchased, then it being seized by eminent domain. So with the creation of the Chappaquiddick Recreational Area and retitled Prince William Forest Park in the 1940s, Batestown is going to see some pretty significant changes. So you can see right here, this is Batestown. So the northern portion of Batestown, the western portion of Batestown, and the southern portions of Batestown are either incorporated into Prince William Forest Park or immediately surrounded by Prince William Forest Park. And then also this major road that went from Batestown up to 234. Now all of this is in the boundaries of the park, and that is closed. This is, whoop. Whoop. This is no longer accessible for residents. So now everyone has to go through this one road to Dumfries to get out of this community. So this is going to stymie a lot of residents' ability to really use the land and how they want to. And I did not realize this until I was looking at our brochure for today, and then also our journals. This is a photograph of an individual who's so far unidentified from the Chomawamsett Regional Park time period from the 1930s. One of the workers to create this new forest park. Is he a resident of Batestown? Unfortunately, just can't answer that question right now. He's one of those photographed members from this time period. There's probably like 4 or 5 photographs. And I just realized this morning we just used the same photograph over and over and over. So we need to start using some of those other photographs. But I always like having the ability to put a person's face during this history. So before we move on, there is a connection with basically Batestown, or the land that used to be Batestown, with the CIA. During World War II, with the outbreak of war and America's participation, there's a new organization that's being established called the Office of Strategic Services. So this is created to train covert agents to go overseas to convert intelligence, gather intelligence covertly, or to conduct other types of covert sabotage. And their main training area is in actually the Prince William Forest Park area. And so some of the training centers for the OSS is within the boundaries of Batestown. And then after World War II, the OSS is going to be rebranded the Central Intelligence Agency. So there is a connection between the CIA and the community of Batestown. So again, so we're moving back to this map from the early 20th century. So again, this is one of the main roads, 632, and you can see these 2 landmarks, Little Union Baptist Church and Cabin Branch School right here. So with the creation of Prince William Forest Park, all of this road is now no longer accessible, and this is the road that went to the mine. This is now in the boundaries of Prince William Forest Park. So really, there's this road that goes in and out of the community with maybe an eighth of a mile, a tenth of a mile on Mine Road. So that's the road network that changes after the creation of Prince William Forest Park. This might be a little bit harder to see, unfortunately. This is a map of the area in the later half of the 20th century. So you can see again the road being changed. I cannot identify exactly when the name change takes place. It happens after World War II, but at some point, Batestown Road is renamed Mine Road. And so in the oral histories, it's because their mail wasn't being delivered by the post office, and so they'd have to go into Dumfries to pick up their mail. When they wanted their mail delivered, the post office said that they could do that, but it would have to change the name back, or change the name from Batestown to Mine Road, because there was a little bit of a Mine Road already in existence. When this name change happens, again, I'm not been able to identify precisely. So there is an issue with this, though, that it obliterates the community's name. One of the remnants of many African American communities in Prince William are landmarks, or at least landmarks as roads. So even though very few buildings, if any, of Lucasville survive to 2024, we still have a Lucasville Road. Even though very few elements of the Agneeville community still survive today, we still have the Snowtown Road. So the name of the road still allows people to realize there were communities here at some point. That changes when this name is changed from Batestown Road to Mine Road. Now this is also problematic because that mine, when it's closed, again, is causing some environmental issues for residents. And so this is causing a lot of angst in the community because not only are their history being symbolically erased, it's being replaced by something that is causing issues for the community dealing with. And so one of the interesting or nice aspects for the Oral History Project was a lot of documentation that this road was originally known as the Batestown Road. Many people remembered it being called Batestown Road. And there were also other efforts in the late 20th century to try and rename the road back to Batestown Road, but for many reasons that just didn't succeed. But that changed in 2020, 2021. One of the results of the Oral History Project again was the remembrance of the Batestown Road being named Batestown Road, and so a desire to resurrect the name change. And so this is a letter that went out to the property owners, and there was no pushback for any of the residents or the property owners to have the name of Mine Road reverted back to Batestown Road. And so some of the first organizations that started helping with the effort to rename the road was the Historical Commission. And then that went to the County Board of County Supervisors, and then VDOT and the town of Dumfries to vote on the name change. And so this is an effort or a project that actually saw very few, if any, roadblocks or issues. And so very quickly, there was support to rename my road back to Batestown Road. And it kind of in the tradition of homecoming for Little Community Baptist Church, this program was scheduled for June as a large community gathering for people. So people who live in the area, who've moved out, live in other parts of Virginia, and other people who just moved out of the Commonwealth all returned back to this place. And so this shows a list of all the people who or organizations who were involved in the planning for this event, including Chair Green of the Prince William Historical Commission, and then also the program as well. And I believe this is the first program in which the county had officially commemorated Juneteenth as a county holiday. This was not planned to be this, but it was really fortunate to have these things that just happened. So as part of the program to rename the road back to Batestown Road, there was a community exhibit that had been established for the day. The main site of the program was at the County Green in Dumfries, and so this is the gazebo. So there was a community exhibit, pop-up exhibit that was put up. Most of these photographs are in the collection of Charlie Reed, a one-time resident of the community and historian for Batestown. But what was interesting through the course of the day, people were actually adding to this exhibit. People were going back to their houses or going to their cars and actually bringing pictures of their family members out to join in this exhibit for a few hours. And so unfortunately, I didn't take any photographs, but right here is President Cuff of the Historic Prince William organization with his camera. So I think we can bug David for some photographs of this exhibit. And so that's Charlie Reed right there with the honor of changing my road back to Batestown Road. And that's Supervisor Bailey and her staff in the Potomac District who were very important in this name change project as well. So like I mentioned earlier, the two main sources that we have for historical research for the Batestown community are those two oral history projects. So the 2019 Oral History Project is online, so that's the website right there. It's kind of long, but if you go to our main website, you can still find this within the community pages. And so you just click on this hyperlink. This will open up the 322-page 2019 Oral History Project. And we are working on uploading the DeWitt Bates Oral History Project as well. If for whatever reason you don't like digital history, you want to actually physically handle it yourself, both copies of these oral histories are available for you to use at Relic at the Prince William Library Systems Central Library Office. And like I mentioned earlier, one of the goals for today's program was to get you interested and want you to go out to these communities yourself to explore on your own or with our walking history tour. And we have one of these scheduled for later this year on June 21st. And I believe Charlie Reed will be helping us with this walking tour. So we'll have one of the definitive authorities of Batestown with us. But more importantly, you can see some of these history sites, these sources that we talked about today in 3D. It's always nice to actually engage with history in the present at the actual site it actually happened on. So I know it's going to be potentially a little warmer than today. Hopefully it's not going to be raining like today. But I do encourage you to come out. It's on Friday, June 22nd, from 7 to 8. It is free. Again, all this information is on the website. So I do hope to see most of you, if not all of you, later this year for the walking tour of Batestown. And with that, I have a little bit of time for questions. I wanted to make sure that we weren't right on 10 o'clock so that everyone had a little bit of time for questions and also, more importantly, for a little bit of a break so you can walk around for our 10 o'clock. So thank you for being a very pleasant audience for me for the 10 o'clock. Yes.
Were there any African American communities along the Potomac River?
So Neabsco is an African American community, and then that's not right along the Potomac River, but it's fairly close. I'm looking at Lauren. I think that's really the only one. I can't think of any off the top of my head, but I think it's just Neabsco. So, yes.
Did Batestown have an Oddfellows? Organization Oddfellows Hall, or Fraternal Hall?
I don't think it had an Oddfellows Hall. Some of the main, basically fraternal activities were being subsumed by the local baseball team. So that was the way that many of the people were finding ways to gather and create another sense of community. I'd have to go and check the origin.
Also, it was they would go to the barber shop. The other place that they would hang out, the candidates.
Yep. Yeah.
You mentioned a mine there in Batesville. What was it again that they were mining for?
So it's pyrite. So pyrite is basically like fool's gold or elements of fool's gold. It was used basically in production, I believe, to refine gunpowder. And so that was established, dynamite. And so there, not surprisingly, is a large need in the 19 teens. But in 1920, it's no longer profitable. And so it abruptly closes. And then the oral history projects do, especially 2019, has some really good information about African American miners for pyrite mine working from 1900 to 1919. Yes, sir?
What was the peak population of Batestown? Roughly?
I would say roughly about 300, 400 people. So it's fairly large. And again, this is a hard issue to answer with any accuracy because where does Batestown end and like Hickory Grove begin? So you would have potentially residents who would say that they were both a resident of Batestown and Hickory Grove, but about that much. And again, during this time period, Prince William County has a population of about 12 to 13,000 residents throughout the entire county. So it's not a fairly large population for Prince William. So a pretty sizable community. It's not the largest African American community in Prince William. That would have to be Prince William Street, Liberty Street in Manassas when this is still a town. But I would say Batestown is within the top 3 largest African American communities in Prince William. Yes.
Harry Bird Ranch was on your map. Do we know who Harry Bird was, and is Harry Bird related to Batestown?
That I don't know. I think Lord has everyone's email, so I'll do some research on that, and you'll get a email blast later. But honestly, I unfortunately I don't know the answer to that question. Yes, Abby.
On the UT Steelback, there's a spot called Norris Hills Lunch or Time Park at 20 Cherry Hill. Do you know what that is?
All the way at the beginning, so right here.
Yeah, it's over by Aqua Lane, Cherry Hill.
Very else. No. Unfortunately, I don't know. This is a good resource. This is one of the first resources that encapsulated all this information in one place, but it's not a perfect resource. So there are some elements that just weren't captured in this time period for each chill map. And then if you want a better high resolution image of this map, it's on Historic Prince William's website, correct, David?
Yes.
Okay. So this is digitally available online. You can zoom in and get some really good features with this Historic Prince William's website.
So it's not for sale yet? A beaver one?
It was for sale at one point. I think it was sold here at the Manassas Museum at some point in the 1980s, 1990s. But it's an older map, and occasionally you will still find it in the wild for sale. But for the most part, I think all the prints have been sold or allocated at this point. But it is still available online. And then also if you want a hard copy, I know Relic has a copy of this on the wall. So if you just don't to choose to go on the internet, you can find a hard copy on Relic. All right. Well, thank you again for coming out this rainy.